Aloha and welcome to The Art of Life. I'm your host, Willow Chang Elion. As always, we broadcast live every Friday from 2 to 3 p.m. here in the heart of downtown, also known as Pioneer Plaza. We have a little curveball, but we are adaptable. So first of all, I'd like to say Kung Hei Fat Choi, San Nin Fai Lo, San Tai King Hong for all of our people celebrating Chinese New Year, Tibetan New Year, every type of New Year that follows the moon. Happy New Year to the year of the ram, goat, or sheep, depending on what mountainous animal you identify with. We're hoping that this will be a prosperous and healthy and inspirational year for everybody out there. So, I always like to disclose what the real deal is, and we had a guest scheduled who will need to be scheduled for a later time. Our guest, Aisha Ali, as earlier planned, health matters and couldn't make it out to the islands. So you know what? We're adaptable here. I went to this thing called social media, perhaps you've heard of it, and late last night I asked the peanut gallery, my beloved peanut gallery, to turn the tables and ask me questions. I've done this once before, earlier last year, and so now we've got round 2 of viewer questions for me, and there were no topics, I don't know what that was. Like we said, it's fluid, folks. There were no topics that were barred or subjects. So we are going to go through the reader topics. And the one thing I found of interest is that these questions tended to be more of a personal nature as opposed to being topics that deal with politics or current events or what have you. I'm not really sure why that is, but hey, sometimes they say beggars can't be choosers. So I also brought my trusty ancient iPhone here so I can see if there's any last-minute questions that came down the pike that I didn't print out. Alrighty, so in no particular order, let me open this up because I thought I will go to these questions first and deal with them. Alrighty, here we go. I'm going to identify the questioner, unless they have asked to not be revealed. And there were some people who wrote to me in private and sent me some questions. So I think that might be my hair. Sorry about that. Question number 1 was sent in by Lee Miyashiro and asks, how do you feel about the homeless situation and how would you realistically handle it if you were in charge? Now, at this point, I'm going to defer to the fact that we've had a fantastic show concerning the homeless issue when we had Kath and Xian. I will put a link to that on our Art of Life page. But clearly, I think the homeless situation, which is an important one here in Honolulu, an ever-present one and a growing situation, is something that needs to be dealt with in a compassionate way, but also a realistic way. I think that we need to find ways to perhaps administer treatment to people who have the multitude of, there's all kinds of homeless people. So let me backtrack. So I think there's many, many studies. Lord knows there have been enough studies done on this situation. We have people who have economic hardships, you know, people who have lost a job or they're a couple of paychecks away from being homeless. You have people who maybe they're evicted from their house and they're unable to find housing in a timely manner. You have people who are clearly in transition. Then you have people who are veterans. You have people who are dealing with mental health issues and substance abuse issues. So there's no one singular homeless profile. The only thing that they have in common is that you can visibly see them on the street and that we see them in these large encampments in many parts of the island. So it's not exclusively in, say, Kaka'ako or near Thomas Square or in Chinatown. They're everywhere, even in little old Manoa Valley. So what can we do? I think that we certainly have the space and the means to deal with the homeless situation, but the question is there the interest in dealing with it? One of the things that has been discussed about affordable housing has been micro units and also the building of housing spaces in, what were they called? They're called containers. You've seen those Matson containers? It sounds kind of crazy. It sounds like we're shoving people in little boxes. But the reality is I think the difference between being in a tent or being without a tent and sleeping on a piece of cardboard versus being in a micro house inside of a Matson container is something to consider. I think you also have to give people structure. most people benefit with some type of structure, even if you're a free spirit like myself. What it does is it gives you a purpose. It also gets you and integrates you into community. So there have to be some types of jobs, whether that's like a work study, whether that's working the land, whether that's cleaning up graffiti. There's no shortage of things that can be done. And the creation of jobs, as we saw with the WPA in the 1940s, and I know some of you think the 1940s, it's 2015, how can you suggest that they're the same? But President Roosevelt found ways to put people to work, whether that's working on the roads, if that's clearing trees, if that's digging ditches, if that's dealing with the sewers. We have a force of people that have able bodies and minds to varying degrees that could be put to work. I think there needs to be tax credits and incentives given to corporations to assist and help out with the homeless situation. I also understand that in a capitalistic society, not everyone is going to be open to the idea of a handout. So that's why I think a trade is of importance. I think it's worth looking into the possibility of sending people to their original home of origin if that's what they want to do, but I also think that that's a slippery slope because it could encourage people to just come to Hawaii, hang out for 6 months or a couple years, and then expect the state of Hawaii to put them on a plane and send them back to Cali. I'm not really sure if that's ideal. I think it is a very multi-pronged situation that also would require as many solutions. So I don't think it's one size fits all, but the one thing I'm convinced about is that something has to be done. And in actuality, something should have been done a long time ago, but the only moment we have is the present. It's a brand new year. I think it's a conversation that really requires a lot of discussion and, more importantly, a lot of action. So I hope some of those ideas were satisfactory. Thankfully, I'm not running for office, so that's just my 2 cents. I see the homeless people daily on my drive home and to work, and I used to make it a habit of coming home from Tango. I would count how many people were sleeping on King Street until it got to a point where that was just actually an exercise in depression because there were so many more people on the streets. So, so be it. There's the dirty, dark secret about Honolulu. I guess we've made it as a large metropolitan city. Thank you, Lee, for your question. Okay, Lee Mirshir comes back with question 2. They were just on a roll last night. We're getting a little personal here. Describe your Punahou experience, and did going to Punahou give you an advantage over kids from other schools? So this is a 2-part question. So I say in a complete journalistic disclosure, to be upfront, I feel really lucky because I went to both public and private school. So I started off at public school in elementary, and then I transferred over to Punahou. It was the only school that I applied for, so phew, I dodged a bullet and I went to Punahou. And I'm grateful for that opportunity because I do believe in education. I got an excellent education at Punahou. There are amazing teachers, facilities, courses, and opportunities that clearly are afforded in that type of environment. However, I'm also a big believer that the home life and the structure that you have in the environment you're growing up in has a tremendous impact on the kind of education that you're receiving. So if you like to read by choice, if your guardians or parents get you involved in community activities, whether that's being in Boy Scouts or going hiking or being part of a hula halau or playing soccer, the family interaction and the type of structures, the activities, if you're reading, are they involved? Do they check if you do your homework? Do they check your homework? Do they ask you what you've done? Those things are really invaluable, and I think that whether you go to public school or a private school, if you don't have that type of support and that kind of background, you're really swimming upstream. Because anybody can take a child and place them in front of a computer or TV and expect them to do the work. And any parent can just expect the school to take the initiative and provide everything for the kid, whether that's a meal at the morning or a place to nap or an after-school activity. You know, teachers do a lot. As a teacher myself, I know that teachers do a lot and they're very rarely compensated the way they should be. But I think what has happened is that a lot of the, not the burden, but the responsibility of parenting, of active parenting, has been transferred over to teachers. Did going to Punahou give me advantage? I know that in any situation, whether that's a primary school or a college or even a work type of thing, if you're networking, the associations that are made depending on what you've been exposed to can be a help or a hindrance. So I think anybody who has gone to Punahou, or if you've gone to Yale, or if you're in Hawaii, you've gone to University of Hawaii, and people will think and know that you're an alumni, or if you're into Greek life and you're in a different type of fraternity, those associations will help you, just like if you belong to Oahu Country Club or what have you. People, I think by nature, are very tribalistic, and they go for a short-term, quick, accessible way to assess who you are and your identity. So if you have the credentials of going to a school that is committed to excellence, that could equally be versed in classics and traditional teaching, as well as things that are progressive, you are going to have an upper hand, provided that you're going to use those connections and use that opportunity to your benefit. You can meet just as many people who've gone to fantastic schools and have had every opportunity, and they don't do anything with it. And you can meet somebody who went to school that maybe is in a rough neighborhood and they don't have a high graduation percentage of students and things like that, and they can aspire and find it within themselves to make something of their life. So in the end, I think all things boil down to choice. The choices that we daily make, the types of things that we habitually do, and the intention of why we make those choices and what motivates us towards progress or success or good deeds, whatever it is that motivates you, it gets down to a personal responsibility. I know there was something else I didn't answer here. Did it give me advantage over kids from other schools? I think it's safe to say that anybody who's known me for any length of time, I've been a precocious person since I was a child. So I did read, my parents were very involved. I've always let my freak flag fly, regardless of whether it was understood or not. I had faith in the process that someone would finally get me. And I think that boils down to the age-old question of nature versus nurture. And I think that for millennia on, people will be debating this, whether it's something that you're born with or if it's something that you learn. So I think if you're in an environment that encourages your strengths, or if you're in a safe place that allows you to explore and discover what your strengths are, or maybe help you with things that might be a weakness, it's got to be beneficial no matter what. I will say that for a very long time, I felt a hesitancy to let people know what school I went to, simply because in previous times, if you said that you went to Punahou, there would be a knee-jerk response, and maybe some people wouldn't want to respond or interact with you. Or maybe they thought that you were snooty, or maybe they thought you were affluent, or maybe they thought that you had a silver spoon in your mouth. None of those things which are true for me. I came from a very, sorry Mom and Dad, working class background with the American work ethic to work hard. We were a single income. My father worked for the government. We had secondhand cars. We ate a lot of Spam and a lot of pork and beans. We didn't belong to country clubs. We didn't do extensive traveling. But my parents are amazing people, and very smart and very intelligent and very self-motivated. And I think for me, what was probably very important is the personal mythology. My father went to Harvard, and it was at a time when there weren't a lot of Asian people at Harvard. I know it's hard to believe in today's day and age, but at the time that he went, he was maybe one of 3 or 4 Asian people on the whole campus. Think about that for a moment. And just knowing that my father put his mind to it and applied and just tried and went for the brass ring, as cliche as it is, and was able to follow through. And my mother, you know, just picking up and coming to Hawaii on a vacation and deciding to stay and starting a new life all over. These kinds of stories, your personal stories from your family, I think, contribute a great deal to your ideas of what success and what opportunities and possibilities you have. So I hope that explains probably a lot more than the question that was asked. I'm looking at the phone here. Question number 3. Lee comes back with another question. My goodness. All righty. Oh, I think I'm being waved to take a break. For some reason, the omniscient voice of God is not working in the earpiece. So hold tight. We're going to get to these questions. This is The Art of Life, and I'm Willow Chang.
Here's the deal. I'm Jay Fidel. I'm the host of Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, which is the Energy Policy Forum's program on Wednesday. That's how we call Wednesday Energy Wednesday. We call it Energy Wednesday every Wednesday. Are you surprised? Okay, and we try to get guys like Jim Alberts here from Hawaiian Electric who can tell us what's really going on in energy. We want to be informed. It's so important. It's the most important initiative in our state. Clean energy is major, okay? And that's why we cover it on this show. That's the deal. What do you think, Sharon?
I think that's great. That's why we're here every Wednesday from 4 to 5, and we hope you all join us so we can hear people like Jim coming on our show and co-host Ray Starley from Hawaii Energy.
Okay, Jim, you've been here today. You've seen this. You heard what she said. What do you think?
I think it's a tremendous opportunity for people to come together and talk about the issues. Oftentimes, there isn't a good forum to bring these key issues out into the public, and this is a tremendous way to go about it. And the activity of this show is essential to keep talking about energy because, as you said, it's such an essential part of our lives that we need to pay attention to it and we need to think about the future.
Okay, Ray, your turn.
Well, this is a special time in the history of Hawaii where we're making some pretty radical changes in the way we use energy and generate energy. And this show is the one place you can count on coming to every Wednesday and hearing something about the latest issues that are on the table, being discussed, that will affect us all going forward. So come join us, and if you have some ideas you want to share with us about energy, give us a call and let us know. We'll put you up here and let you talk for an hour. So come see us.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Jim. It's great to be, from ThinkTech's point of view, it's great to have this show. We love the show. It's our most important show. So come around and listen to us 4 to 5 on Wednesday. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha, this is The Art of Life. I'm your host, Willow Chang Leon, and as known, if you can't watch it live, you can watch everything that's archived both on YouTube as well as The Art of Life with Willow Chang Facebook page. I just had this idea, and so later this weekend, possibly tonight, we'll see, I will post the questions that were fielded to me, so you have the option to read them and in your own mind answer these questions on your own, because the journey of self-discovery sometimes needs a prompt, and so these are some prompts. Going back to the questions from our viewers, as asked via Facebook last night, Lee Miyashiro writes, question number 3, why have you not entered So You Think You Can Dance yet? Well, for those of you who are aware, I am both a singer and dancer professionally by trade, and I teach. And I have had people ask me the same thing. The other variation was, why haven't you been on American Idol? I have varying levels of respect for both of those shows. I think they serve important purposes. The most important one is their entertainment, obviously. There is a very high caliber of dance skills on a show like So You Think You Can Dance. And I've enjoyed watching the various seasons and contestants and the choreographers. I think it's helped elevate dance into the public eye, which is wonderful. I think a lot of these reality shows have an age cutoff, so not to go into that topic with a great amount of effort, but I think I'm not in that age bracket, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I think it's unfortunate overall that a lot of these shows have age restrictions, because the reality is that age is only one part of the equation of what constitutes someone as an individual. And some would argue that it's just a number that reflects how long you've been on the earth. Very rarely can give you an indication of like how mature, how intelligent, how responsible, how aware somebody is. I mean, if someone is 35 or 21 or 63, you know that you've been on the planet that length of time. And then in certain cultures, especially in Asian cultures, they're going to add 1 more year to account for the 9 months you were in your mama's belly. So I think it's unfortunate because a lot of times when people have had a chance to live a while, you accrue different experiences and you bring different experiences to the playing field, whether that's in the classroom or in a competition. But Americans in particular tend to be very age-driven and very youth-obsessed. And again, there are many fabulous athletes and musicians and dancers and artists who prove time and again that age could really be just a number. Especially when you're in the arts, your ability to tap into emotive things and personal experiences kind of marinate your artistic process. And so you have a different kind of depth, which could be a possibility with a more mature contestant. But to be honest with you, another component of it is that this is going to sound kind of cheesy and it's going to sound kind of Tony Robbins, but ultimately I compete with myself. And so I'm not really the type of person that's drawn to competing with other individuals. It's not really like a fear of losing, and I don't mind having my okoli handed to me. Actually, there are times when I find that that's very enthralling and you learn a lot from that. But I don't know at this point in my life if that's something that I would want to pursue. I also think that there's a lot of tinkering that goes on behind the scenes in the editing. So what they do is they basically edit the program to create types of characters and types of archetypes. And even though you might have raw footage where something is said, by the time you edit it, you can kind of present it and morph it into create a character. And I just don't want to be subject to that. This is one of the reasons why I love this venue with Art of Life, is that I can speak freely and speak from both my heart and mind and not be subject to the cutting room floor. So hope that answers your question. Okay, Keith Rose just came in and he was just sending these questions, many questions, and all the way in Japan. So thank you, Mr. Rose, for being so involved and watching the show. He writes, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self? In 2 words, if possible, then expound upon it. Okay, well, I'm just going to break the first rule. I'm not sure if I could do it in 2 words off the cuff. I think the advice I would give myself would be to trust the process. And if you have a tendency to overthink things, there are strong possibilities that you might think about it so much and not do it. Sometimes I have done that. And I can say, looking back at different things in my life, because I trust the process, things work out. But it's so hard to know if that's going to happen. So I think that's something that maybe everybody could possibly meditate, is like to trust the process. And also to follow your gut, because your gut often knows exactly what you need to do. And it's when you shut that down and you close that off that you kind of set yourself up for problems. So, and I'll add a third thing, because it's not 2 words. Sometimes it's good to just ask yourself, is this going to matter 6 months from now? You know, because the reality is we may not even be around in 6 months, and that sounds morbid, but the reality is there's nothing guaranteed. So it's wonderful to set goals, and it's great to have intention, and it's good to know what you would like to do and go about your day. But sometimes you have to just say, is this going to matter 6 months from now? Like, really, is that algebra test going to matter 6 months from now? That's not to slag anybody involved in math or academics, but we can very easily stress ourselves out about things that maybe do not need or require that much stress. Ultimately, stress is a killer, and it's extremely bad for the body, and it's what causes disease. Look into it. Okay, Keith Rose has another question. What is your favorite book to gift? Now, this is going to be a 2-part answer. I think that if you want to give somebody a book or to gift them a book, it is ideal to just give them the damn book. Do not take something from your library and give it to somebody thinking that it's going to come back to you, because if you have any attachment to it, chances are books are rarely returned. So it's better to give it to them, and then that gives that person the option to do whatever they want with it, whether it's highlight it or dog ear it or take it to the pool or leave it by the toilet, whatever they do. I have 2 books that I actually, three books that I like to gift in no particular order. One of them is Care of the Soul by Thomas Moore. I've given quite a few people copies of this book. And it's a magnificent book that delves into all of those matters, the care of the soul, and he weaves in elements of psychology and psychiatry and myths and music, and just many wonderful things. I've actually read all of Thomas More's books. He started off as a priest and then left the brotherhood, I guess you'd call it, and then became an author. Another book that I enjoy giving is A Natural History of the Senses by Diane Ackerman, another person whose works I love to read, and I've read most of her works, and as the book succinctly suggests, it's a natural history of the senses, all of our senses, all 6 of our senses. 6? Well, you got to read the book. And she writes frequently for National Geographic. She's an amazing poet and just a wonderful, wonderful woman who's contributed so much to the world. The third book is a classic. Perhaps many of you have read it. It's Paul Coelho's The Alchemist. There was a fantastic interview with him, I think 2 months ago, in Oprah magazine. And it's a modern day fable that essentially reveals in a very simple, basic way, universal truths about the importance of finding your purpose and your calling and following through with it. And I think there's a reason why it has sold millions of copies, and it's been translated probably into about 25, at least 25 different languages, a contemporary classic, and very meaningful, and probably a book that I think I'm overdue to revisit it. I read it probably about 20 years ago. I took it to Egypt with me when I was working there, and it was really life-changing to read both of those books. In fact, Care of the Soul is another book I took with me when I was living abroad. So thank you for that question. I hope those books turn you on, and I would actually say any of the books from either 3 of those authors, Thomas More, Diane Ackerman, Paul Coelho, are fantastic. I've read many of their works. There's quite a few people who, once I get involved in their readings, Michael Ondaatje is another one. He wrote The English Patient. Amazing landscapes for the mind and the heart and things to think about. Keith Rose, again, encore, as they say in French. What person comes to mind when you think of, when you think of punchable as in you want to punch them in the face? Well, that's a very interesting question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question before, and I think it's timely considering that Pope Francis mentioned about insulting someone's religion is like asking for a punch in the face, and that created quite a brouhaha. You know, I make a very strong effort to refrain from physical violence. I don't think it's necessarily the way I personally want to operate. I'm not going to say I've never hit somebody. I had a 6th grade lunchroom brawl, as young girls often do. I'm not proud of it, even though I'm smiling. It's just hilarious to think of me, 12 years old, like duking it out with Julie Motusui, I remember. And then we became best friends. Yeah, I don't really want to punch somebody. I think when I encounter somebody who rankles me that way, there's a couple of things you can do. You can remove yourself from the situation. You can try to clearly express how you feel and set some boundaries, or you can, I mean, you could tell them that you think they're out of line or that you think they're a jerk. I mean, those are all options. I don't know if I want to punch somebody in the face, but it would be great if we had trap doors. Like if there was a trap door or an eject seat and someone could be ejected from a car, like Inspector Gadget, could be kind of cool. So, sorry, can't name somebody that I want to punch in the face. Actually, no, there's a world leader that comes really close to it, but I don't want to say who. And it's no one American. Keith Rose comes back again, my goodness. This is what happens when you're in Japan and you're 17 hours ahead. If you were stranded on an island, what 2 non-survival related items would you take? Does Hawaii count? I feel like I'm stranded here. I've thought about this. My mother enjoys watching Survivor, and I don't, simply because I think a lot of those people act like jerks on the show. And I can't think of anything more horrific than being on a show with an island with a bunch of jerks. And I've thought about this, like if I could take something. And my first initial response is I'd want to take a set of tweezers. Because I know how aggravating it is to have something stuck in your skin, or if you can't get it out, and that seems really practical. If you're stuck on an island and you're doing hard labor, chances of getting something stuck a thorn, a bristle, a splinter is very possible. But the writer in me, I would count it as one thing, even though technically I know it's two. I would want to have something to write with, a writing implement. It doesn't have to be a Mont Blanc pen. It could just be a regular pen and paper, a bound notebook. I like that option to write things down. And no, I obviously wouldn't be writing a laundry list because there would be no laundry to do. But I would think that being stuck on an island, you would have a lot of time to reflect and to think about things, and I'd want to have an option to capture that. I would say the third thing, even though you asked for two, it would be a toss-up between floss or a toothbrush, because rat mouth, even if you're not kissing anybody, it's a terrible thing. Got to fight the rat mouth. So that's that's what it comes down to. And okay, so now we've got to take a break. We'll be right back. This is The Art of Life.
Aloha, Yappers, and a Happy New Year. I'm your host, King Zilly. From inner city out to the platform and now on the Yap Show. It's a new year, and most would say a new beginning. So this is a call to action. As we promote tech, energy, diversification, and globalism, with ThinkTech Hawaii, the Yap Show is all about advocacy for effective leadership, comprehensive youth policies, programs, and access to knowledge and information for upward social mobility, especially for the historically underprivileged youth. This means we'll be looking at young people making a difference in their community. Youth policies here in Hawaii, the country, and the world. We want to highlight youth programs that are meeting young people where they are, working together to accomplish a goal or tackle an issue while providing information and access to free educational content for anybody looking to learn on their own time, study for an exam, or simply refresh their memory. We do this by inviting everyday people like yourself, state policymakers, youth advocacy groups, youth programs, professionals, and so forth. But most importantly, we'll be partnering up with my new organization, causeeffect.org. More information on Cause Effect, as this website is currently in development in hopes to feature courses, seminars, tutorials, and conducting surveys that will be featured on the show. As we leave behind 2014, I wish I could say we leave behind issues such as police brutality, youth violence, education, economic mobility, and so many other hot-button topics that made 2014 a difficult year. So what does it mean for the new year? What does it mean for youth policy? What does it mean for Hawaii as a whole? And most importantly, how does it affect you and your community? We want you to tune into the Yap Show at 3 p.m. Friday and find out. Aloha.
Hi, my name is Andrew Howard. I'm an astronomer at the Institute for Astronomy at the University of Hawaii up in Manoa. I'd like to tell you about the annual open house that we're having. This year, it is on April 6th, 11 to 4 p.m. It's an all ages event, kids, grown-ups, even people in between, everyone is welcome. We have a lot of really fun activities. You get to meet astronomers, look at yourself in an infrared camera, play with Legos, make robots, look at videos. You can even make some of the kids like to make comets out of gravel and snow. Even adults like to do that too. You'll be able to look at the sun with a solar camera safely. It's really a great activity. We do this every year in April, and I hope to see you this year. Thanks.
Aloha, this is The Art of Life. I'm your host, Willow Chang Alion, and this episode, it's questions that are given to me by our viewers via the internet. We have quite a few questions, and so I'm going to do my best to get through all of them, although I reserve the right to maybe do part two if we can't, because I want to make sure I give some answers that have some thought behind them. So yes, these were given to me last night. I kind of briefly looked at them at 12:30 in the morning, and then I just decided to print it out. So I'm cold. I'm not a robot. I didn't like give it lots and lots and lots of thought in advance. So, you know, the views and opinions expressed here may not necessarily be those of ThinkTech Hawaii, now that we've cleared that. So as you've realized, Keith Rose, our viewer, has written quite a few questions, and he has a series of questions that all are on the theme of, if you had this event, who would you invite as your guest? So I'm going to try to just lump a few of these together and answer them in a very swift way. Mr. Rose writes, "You're granted a dinner and an evening with one person alive today." Ah, I didn't notice the alive. who is your guest? Okay, so I was thinking about this on the drive over here, and there's a couple of people that come to mind. And, you know, a lot of times when people are asked these questions, they instantly go to public figures, perhaps because they're assuming that we're all going to have the same point of reference and we'll know who these people are. Like, oh, I'd like to have dinner with Oprah, or, you know, Pope Francis would be great to have frittatas with, although that's not a dinner item. And then I started thinking about this, and it's like, you know what, let's move beyond just the cult of personality and public figures. And I thought, well, what about people who are in your neighborhood? To quote the child song, who are the people in your neighborhood? The people that you meet when you're walking down the street, the people that you meet each day. And you know what? I don't even know a lot of my neighbors. I think that that's a 20th and 21st century phenomenon. I might know them by face, I might know what their name is, but I never spend any time to them. Maybe we'll say hello to each other in the garage or by the trash dump when we're dropping off the trash. I would say that having a lunch or dinner with a neighbor could be a positive thing for everybody out there. I wouldn't mind revisiting people who've had a great impact in my life at this point in my life as an adult, because I interacted with them when I was much younger. So I thought of my kumuhula, Alicia Smith. And she's still around, and every blue moon I have an Alicia Smith sighting and I see her. And I would love to break bread with Kumu Alicia Smith and talk story and see how she's doing, because she was so instrumental in conveying a lot of the important values of Hawaii to me, and certainly imbuing me and fostering this love of hula and Hawaiian language and culture and dance. I think another thing that would be important to add is that I've actually met quite a few of my Facebook friends who started off as Facebook friends, and then we shift gears and we met in real life, and we've met for coffee and we've met for lunch, and what an amazing delight that has been, including Mr. Rose, who's given these questions. One day we had 4 Facebook friends meet for coffee at Starbucks about 4 years ago, and it was a revelation to think that we could make the jump from online to being in the same place. And this has happened also as I've traveled to teach in different places. I've had an opportunity to meet Facebook friends. So I hope that kind of answers the question. Like there's many ways I think that you can construe that and you can make it meaningful. And ultimately it involves making the connection. So he asked, variation number 2, I have a little itch here. You have one question. Oh, it's different. Pardon me. You have one question to one world leader. Who is the leader and what will you ask? That is a good question. I'm going to go for something that's really, the world leader that I'm going to ask of is Pope Francis, because I've been following him since he's been appointed to his papacy, his role, and there are many things that he says that I find very refreshing and progressive. And then every blue moon he says something that I scratch my head and I'm very unsure. So the who am I to judge in reference to people who are homosexual, or the washing of the feet of women, or even people in halfway homes during the Lenten season, or refusing to wear the fancy papal shoes, or to not drive in the fancy car, or to auction off his personal items for charity, are all very positive things. To state that you don't have to have multiple children to be a good Catholic is a positive thing, because the idea is that he's thinking of overpopulation, and he's had commentary about global warming. There's many things that are positive. And then every blue moon he says something that kind of, woo, throws a curveball. Recently he had suggested that people who don't have children are ultimately selfish. And I thought, that's kind of judgmental, because some people really shouldn't have children for various reasons. Some people can't have children. Some people don't want to have children. Some people serve children themselves as teachers, or in community service of social workers, and maybe they already feel like that they're by proxy like parents. So what would I ask Pope Francis? I think the first thing I would ask him is, what is the true hesitancy to allow women leadership roles within the church? Because he has said a lot of positive things about women, including that he thought that women are the true, they're the people who are the conduit to continue the faith within community. He recently said that, and I will look for the quote and I'll put that on the Facebook page. So if he has such great admiration and love for women, I'm still scratching my head why in 2015 women are not allowed an official role and a more important role within the church. And I think that that would be an amazing change and a shift globally to allow women that role. It would be like a huge avalanche. So there we go. Keith Rose asks, you have a secret, private, leisurely kiss with anyone. Who will you kiss and why? I'm just going to have to say that I'm going to defer on answering that question because I'm not really sure what it has to do with the price of tea in China, but I do thank you for asking. Keith Rose again. If you had to choose between living forever or dying, I love this, in parentheses it says peacefully, dying peacefully in 6 months, which would you choose? You know, I would have to say that I have no way of knowing this, but living forever to me does not sound like a pleasant thing because basically you're going to be seeing all the people that you care for and about dying. I don't really cope with dying even though I know it happens and it's inevitable. It's not something that I enjoy even though I've experienced it many, many times with friends and family members. I don't even like it when I see beautiful architecture torn down. You know, I'm always on a daily basis grappling with impermanence. So the idea of being eternal to me sounds pretty challenging and hellish. So I would have to say a peaceful death sounds far more appealing. And if you're letting you know you have 6 months, then it gives you plenty of opportunities to cross things off of the bucket list. That's my 2 cents. I have no interest in being like Twilight, little glittery vampires and Tuck Everlasting and all of those things. It just doesn't sound really fun. I could be wrong. Keith Rose, where would we be without you? I'd have no questions. Superpower of invisibility or flight? Wow, I'm gonna have to say flight because then I won't have to pay for baggage and have charge cards that give me miles, and then I could just fly to Zurich whenever I felt like it. Invisibility might be a little overrated, and I say this because I've sometimes been privy to hear things that maybe I wasn't supposed to hear, which is almost the equivalent of being invisible, and it can be very hurtful, even though the truth sometimes hurt. I'd rather not be a fly on the wall. I'd rather fly. Keith Rose, he had a picture of a bench, and it was another one of these questions about who would you like to spend time sitting on this bench looking at this vista. I'm going to now mention some people who have passed away who are famous. This is just rattled off my head. I thought of this right before we went on camera. Pina Bausch, an amazing German choreographer who has since passed away. You can see an amazing documentary by Wim Wenders on her work called Pina. Pope Francis, Tina Chow. I'm so sad because we have to close and we have more questions. So this is what I'm going to do because David Tavares, as well as Jessica Houston and a few others have written in. We're going to have part 2, and that will also give you guys the chance to submit some questions so you can hear me babble a little bit more. Don't be afraid to ask whatever it is you want to, but I hope through this journey of me answering these questions, it's given you a chance to answer the questions for yourself. And I look forward to seeing you next week on The Art of Life, where we do everything to keep it Pono. Aloha.